All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this June 26, 2025 meeting of the Newmarket School Board to order. And we will start, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we go into our agenda this evening, I wanted to take a minute and acknowledge a terrible loss that the district suffered week before last. The top of every agenda that I've seen since I've been on the board, we have these words. The Newmarket School District is committed to the highest standards of quality education. We ensure a safe and successful learning community. We embrace diversity and respond to the social, emotional, intellectual, and physical needs of every child. We strive to work with the broader community to ensure that students develop lifelong skills, enabling them to be contributing and productive members of society. Jana Mellon was a person who was passionate about all of those goals and who did a tremendous amount to help the district achieve them, and she will be tremendously missed. So I would ask everybody to just share a moment of silence in remembrance of Jana. Thank you. Moving along, we'd like to invite any residents of town who'd like to come to the microphone and offer public comment on anything on the agenda. We just ask that folks keep their comments to 3 minutes or less.
Can I ask a question? It has to be on the agenda though?
We would prefer that. We try not to shut people off unnecessarily,
Okay, I
but
wasn't sure.
Well,
There was,
we've set a precedent.
There's something.
okay. If there's something you'd like to address, please.
Yes, I don't know what's on the agenda meetings, minutes.
Right. Well, just please come to the microphone.
Hi, my name is Debbie Edwards, and I'm here tonight because I'm hoping to see a change in current protocols for athletic eligibility, primarily the fourth quarter. While I understand there needs to be policies in place, I believe there is a less unfortunate group of kids who would benefit in a change of the norm. I speak of children who come from broken homes and struggle with mental health and how to cope while maintaining grades. I speak of kids who have endured neglect from a parent. Maybe they have witnessed drug abuse and not had the best mother or father figure in their life. My child unfortunately failed the fourth quarter, passed at the end, but by a point, and I was hoping that there is something that could be done. I have sent out many emails, and everyone points back to the rules that are in place. And I'm not quite sure I understand why summer school could not help this, or why can't there possibly be a probationary program in place to give these kids a shot. It could be the only positive male or female interactions and figure they have, and I think we can save these kids from turning to other things as their bad figures have. I am asking for grace and forgiveness and for a chance to continue at what my son has come such a long way from. And I know that the coaches have all expressed their support and concern for many children in these situations. So for clarification, I don't know if you guys can help me, honestly don't know where to turn, so that's why we're here tonight, I think we would like clarifications on what is the school standards as far as passing quarterly or average, and I think what it's NHIAA. I've looked up a couple things that I'm really just confused because I just don't understand that kind of language. But also, if he was to take the course over in the summertime on a like a homeschooling thing, if that could be considered. I'm just kind of curious, like what course of action could and or might possibly be able to help, not just him, but other children as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? I'm sorry, we can't respond directly to questions. If
I
the
know,
board
hope
meeting.
it may be something might think about.
If I could just acknowledge, I did receive your email, and Athletic Director Hayes and Principal Corman and I will be talking about it. Okay, so I heard your point.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd.
Hi, my name is Melissa Unruh. My son is Mason Petriello. I'm here actually for the same reason as well. The school has actually been very supportive. He had a mental health breakdown. He missed half the school year. He also attended an intensive outpatient. He did not end up passing the fourth quarter, but did pass into junior year, which was actually extremely impressive. And I know that there is some coordination with the NHIAA, and also looking for some clarification to see what can be done to help not only him, but other students that may be in that unfortunate situation, just because he had, an unfortunate year, due to personal circumstances and all kinds of reasonings that I don't need to get into right now. The school has it all on file, and I'm just looking for some direction. I'm happy to do the next step, talk to the next person, again, emailing all those people, and just standing with my friend in unity, for those children that might benefit, may not be academically, fitting the criteria, but we all know the benefits of team sports and what that does for them as adults. My son admitted did not do well with adult authority figures, but he was ready to go back in and has the support of all of the coaches to do the work, to show up, to be present, and to graduate and not be a dropout, because this is, as he said, part of his purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know we're in such a dialogue, but maybe Todd, you can help clarification a little bit. Is the issue with fourth quarter grades affecting their ability to play in the fall?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
And that ties to
I should know
NHIA,
that, I apologize.
that ties to NHIA rules, but it also ties to district policy. And
Okay.
coincidentally, there is a policy for second read tonight on activities and eligibility for activities that addresses that issue. And I need to review it with Principal Corman and Mr. Hayes
It
to
turns
see
out it was
how.
an agenda item.
So it was an agenda item. So,
After all that.
so thank you for coming on. That you,
Yeah, that's great. He does have a 504 in place,
Yep.
which also makes him disabled, but I didn't want that to be the only
Under-
reason. I wanted to include other students.
yeah, understand. So we will review the revised policy, which is in front of the board tonight, in light of their circumstances, and see if that has any bearing.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Other public comment? We'll move on. Seeing none, we'll close public comment at 5:25. Public correspondence, well, obviously we know of one piece that we received. Did any other board members receive public correspondence since our last meeting? Nope. Okay.
Could I interject? I do applaud you. I mean, I know we recognize when children are brave or younger folks to come and speak about something happening at school or whatnot, but I applaud you for coming to speak about your own children, but other children as well. I know it's not, I don't even like being on the camera. I'm like,
No, not at all.
Yeah, and what a way to kick off board comments and committee updates. Any other board comments this evening?
The budget committee met, but we barely had quorum, and we ended up not having much really to cover agenda-wise, so there are no major updates there at this time.
So, but you did actually achieve quorum?
We did achieve
Again?
quorum, yeah,
That's
twice.
wonderful.
We did
Thank
twice
you.
now, yeah.
It's a bit different from what we heard at the Charter Commission meeting night before last, so that's great.
Things are really coming together right now, so.
we did meet on the 11th for just to do scheduling with a paraprofessional union and set up dates for negotiations. So we met everyone on both sides, and we have several dates, more than probably necessary
We hope.
on the books, so that we can get things done and ready for the fall.
Great.
I met with the employee handbook committee, and we went through the minor revisions, and I believe the documents presented to us tonight.
Sounds good. Look forward to looking at it.
I don't believe there was anything from the Seacoast. They had their certification, and then that was the end of their school year.
Yep.
And I think I spoke the last time to say I was so impressed with it. Let's see.
Wonderful. This is not strictly speaking a school district committee, but I do want to take a minute and anyone who's watching, make everyone aware that the Charter Commission will be sending out surveys. The timing is a little up in the air as to whether it's the end of this week or next week, but looking for both community input on what people would like to see different, better from their town government, as well as there's particular surveys, I believe, going to people who have in the past served on town boards and committees with somewhat more in-depth questions on what they thought worked well, what could have worked better, and really, the commission is trying to get as much input as we can on, where people feel like our town government is serving residents well and where we've got some opportunities to improve. So those will be going out through a lot of different channels, is my understanding.
Electronically, I presume.
Yeah, primarily electronically. One of the realizations we've come to in our discussions is that the town newspaper that everybody reads just as a concept doesn't exist anymore. So it makes it a bit challenging. All right, superintendent report. The
Oh, thank
floor
you.
is yours.
Thank you. I want to start, we obviously opened the meeting with a moment of silence for Jana Mellon, our business administrator who died sadly, very suddenly, a couple weeks ago. I did have, and I do have some things I want to say about Jana, but before I do that, I did want to introduce the board to a very dear friend of mine who has stepped out of retirement to help us out in this time. So would you mind coming to the mic? Sue Caswell, I called her on Friday the 13th, actually. No, I guess it was Friday the 13th. Go figure. Looking for some help, and her response to me was, Todd, whatever you need.
Thank you so much for,
Yeah.
just for stepping up and helping us out with the dire
Yes.
problem.
Yeah, it's really sad. The circumstances are unfortunate. I knew Jana as a colleague, and I can tell you that the few weeks I've spent there, she did exceptional work.
Yeah.
So stepping in, I'll help and do what I can to move forward.
Yep. So she's also a former, I think it's important to note, she used to be the BA here in Newmarket, and so
Many
she has
years
a
ago.
particular
I'm in my
interest
old office.
in us, so she's back. She just has brought such a sense of calm to our office to kind of, there's lots to do. I do appreciate you being here, Sue,
you.
and I just wanted you guys to know we have a very capable person who is helping us out, and we're going to get through this.
Yes.
So thank you, Sue. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you
Thank
being
you,
here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I did want to just, and bear with me, you can tell I'm a little bit emotional. But I did want to just say a few words about Jen. One of the things, you realize you work with someone for 3 years and you think you know them, and then something like this happens and you realize there's a lot of parts of them that you didn't even know. And Jana was just an incredibly multifaceted person. As we've all alluded to, she was an exceptional business administrator. There was almost, I would have to say in the 3 years I've been here, there's been almost nothing that we've accomplished in this district that she wasn't involved in. And she was always whatever's best for Newmarket. In fact, Dave Riley was joking that Jana used to say to the facilities and everybody, you need to make Todd look good. So your job is to make Todd look good. They had a tough job, let's be honest. But she was very, very concerned about doing what was best for the school district and to be supportive of us. So we all know how incredibly capable she was as a BA, but she also was a pretty remarkable person in other ways. I learned that she, for many, many years, was the costume designer and creator for the Prospect Mountain Drama Department. So for a better part of 10 years, every costume that was made for any production of the Prospect Mountain School, she was responsible for. She used her financial acumen to really help them build an incredible program up there. She's always had a real interest in children and doing what she could to support kids. In fact, her being a BA was a second career for her. She had a previous career in the private sector and then realized she wanted to do something to give back to kids. And so we were lucky enough to have her here. So anyway, she's it's a tremendous loss, but one of the things we're learning too is that Jana was a very forward-thinking person, and Sue will probably nod her head in agreement that there's no business office in the state of New Hampshire that doesn't have more procedures outlined for everything we need to do. So it's like a plug-and-play school district. She's done so much work. So anyway, thank you, Jana, for your work.
You're probably not aware of this, Todd, her first couple of years, there was a lot of digging out she had to do from previous years, and yeah.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So I just can't tell you how much I appreciate her, and obviously as I did send out a communication to the community. They are planning for anybody who's interested, they're planning a celebration of life at some point later this summer, and I'm sure it's going to be very well attended. All right, moving on. I did want to just acknowledge we did just wrap up the school year. Despite some of the struggles we've had here with loss, the school year was a very successful one, and we did wrap up very positively. And I know, I'm sure Patty will be back reporting to you at some point in the near future of all the summer work that teachers are doing. One of the things people often lose sight of is that a lot of the planning and the curriculum work and things that needs to happen to be ready to open school happens over the summer. And we've got dozens and dozens and dozens of teachers meeting over the summer doing some great things, particularly tied to the growth plans that we have in our two buildings. So I'm very excited at the work that they're going to do. And yeah, I guess that's all I have. Dan.
Thank you. Moving on into the agenda, tonight we'll do the second read of two policies that the policy committee has advanced. The first one being Policy JJIB, Extracurricular Activities. We went through this at our previous meeting. I'd like to just start by acknowledging all of the really good work that our students put into helping us review this. The SALT organization within the school actually brought us some of the best feedback in terms of how to enhance this policy to again, to more align it to that we want kids to participate more in all extracurricular activities. SALT is more focused on sports, but even beyond that. So a tremendous thanks to them.
Can I ask what SALT stands for?
Sure. Student Athletic Leadership
Team.
Team, I believe. Okay, thank you. I knew I had the
We should
first
go with
three.
troop. We should change the troop, that's on. It's deep.
Yeah, we,
So this, I had a question last time about this particular policy. I was looking at the NHIAA, it required 4 classes or credits, there's a specific term they use, be passed, whereas our policy mentions 5. And Todd, I thought you were gonna look into that, I don't know if you had an opportunity to.
No, I haven't had a chance to look into that. I would say that we require more classes than the average school.
Mm-hmm.
And so passing 5 when you have a 7 course load is a fairly reasonable bar. So just something to keep in mind. But I will gladly review it with Mr. Hayes and Mr. Corman, and
I mean, it just goes to something we've spoken about before, about what's the purpose of athletics.
right?
And whether we want to punish people who may not have the opportunity to pass a class for whatever reason. And I realize there needs to be some bar, we need to have some,
Right.
there's NHIAA standards we have to follow.
But if you look at, in order to graduate from Newmarket High School, you have to have 24 credits,
Yeah.
which works out to 6 courses a year you have to pass in order to be on target to graduate. So 5 is one less than the rate you need to be at, so you'd have to make up courses. I would point out, by the way, the previous policy, which I think used to say you were required to have a C average or better, and this changed to say pass 5.
Yeah, I guess I understand we have to have a certain number because of the NHIAA. So beyond that, what's our point of having 5 or 6 or 7 versus,
Mhm.
what are we trying to accomplish with the policy?
Right. I mean, certainly, I think, certainly based on some of the comments, I mean, the value that athletics play in a child's life, keeping them connected to school, keeping them motivated, that shouldn't be lost either. So it's important to keep that in mind, too.
Would that address, because forgive me if I'm going to be speaking out of turn, but, does this address the public comments from tonight? If, if there were 4,
Courses that they, I don't know.
Yeah.
How many courses they didn't
It's
pass.
not,
would this help?
we don't know. So it's just, this is more a question. I'm actually trying to remember how this would work. If we had just a floor motion to amend the policy, do we have to send it back to a first read, or does?
Well, you as a board, it's your policies. The first and second read is a process, but it's up to you if you want to make a change and approve it now, or if you
When
want.
would the policy have to be approved by?
I think what would probably make the most sense if you want to consider something like that is maybe have me bring it back, review it with Mr. Hayes and Mr. Corman, in light of some of the feedback we got from SALT, because they reviewed this too. And then maybe come back on the 17th. We could do a second read.
I do have a question regarding eligibility, just because my children are not in this world yet. So I understand, but prior, Newmarket had maintaining at least a C average in 4 courses, and then the student input was passing grade in 5 courses. But then below that, it talks about eligibility is in accordance with NHIAA, with the exception of required minimum grades. Is that why we were able to change it to passing grades in 5 courses versus the
Yeah.
average? Okay.
Yeah, because NHIA only requires you to pass 4 courses. They don't have a grade standard because
Minimum. Okay.
So every school establishes its own internal standards.
They specifically say 4 units of work.
Okay.
And they also say that depending on your scheduling system, you may need to figure out what exactly that means.
Do we
So
know
that
what it
may-
was prior to the C average in 4 courses?
And maybe we need to.
The prior
understand from
policy?
NHIAA
Right.
even what their policy means as far as.
I think what they're trying to do is establish a minimum standard and encourage school districts to wrestle with it themselves. So I think we have the authority to do what we want within that, as long as we don't change it in a way that prevents our kids from being eligible for NHIAA sporting events, because obviously that would be counterproductive. So as long as we don't go weaker than what they ask, we can be stronger than that. It's just a question of what's right for us. I would point out that one of the things that's changing at the high school this year, we've been on a 4x4 block schedule for many years. So what that meant is there were 8 potential class blocks during every semester. So theoretically, if a student filled every block of their day, they could conceivably earn 8 credits a year times 4 years is 32 credits. I don't know of any kids that actually do that. That's an awful lot of, coursework. We are changing the model to a 7-period block, so there's fewer opportunities. So what you're talking about here is by having someone pass 5 classes, you're basically saying out of 7 blocks, there are 5 courses that you are meeting the minimum requirement of passing those courses.
The entire year.
So basically it's, but it's done quarter by quarter.
Quarter, yeah.
So basically what happens is, I'll use the fall, we have used spring grades to determine eligibility for fall sports. And so it's the quarter that precedes immediately that season that is the one that determines your eligibility.
How did that come about?
It's an NHIAA policy.
Yeah, that's the way.
Previous grading period indicates the last prior grading
Previous.
quarter of the school year.
Do we know how
So-
long, I guess I wasn't clear on my question, how long the C average policy was in place and what was the policy prior to that?
I'd have to look at it.
I just didn't know if it was like very long-standing or if it was something that typically
Right.
changed.
What we're working from is what was. So
Okay.
this is what was in place prior to, it actually 2008 was when this was originally adopted. So this is, the changes are the first time it's been changed since 2008.
But it's, the way the policy, the NHIAA policy is written, it's a bit odd because it says, schools utilizing an alternative scheduling format like block scheduling should calculate and equate their system to meet the intent of passing 4 units of work in a traditional framework, i.e. a 4x4 block, they'd have to pass 2. So I don't know what a traditional framework is, and how many units of work would be in a traditional framework.
Well, I think I don't think that terminology matches anything that I can say. Well, I don't know exactly what traditional framework is because every school has its own sort of idiosyncrasies. I think where you need to find the balance is you need to make sure you have kids on a trajectory to successfully complete their high school education in a 4-year cycle. So you don't want to have a system that encourages kids to not be on track to complete in that 4-year cycle. So that's why, like in this case, 5 times 4 years is 20 credits. That's even
Depending
that.
on the course, right? If they don't pass the math courses or whatever, right?
Well, yeah, but yes, so
nuance.
theoretically, to graduate right now, you need 6 credits per year. Now granted, we do ELOs and we have kids doing other virtual experiences to get credits. But much less than 5, you're actually potentially inviting kids to just not be on track to be successful. And maybe that's a conversation we need to have about how are we helping kids be successful.
Well, and what's the intent of the athletic? Yeah, go ahead.
That it feeds right into sort of what I was thinking, which is, I mean, the goal of having kids participating in athletics is that it can be enriching for their lives, right? I mean, and it will help them grow into better adults. If they're struggling right now in childhood and they find themselves failing a class or 2 or 3, and that's the reason that they're not able to participate in sports, I would worry that it would run the risk of turning into sort of like a feedback cycle of, well, yeah, now I can't play sports, so now I've got nothing to do, so now I'm gonna be bored, I'm gonna be even more of a problem, now I'm gonna get worse grades, and now I'm even further away from sports. So I wonder if there is any benefit at all to setting our policy at all more strict than what NHIAA requires from us.
Yeah, I mean, if we weren't, our hands weren't tied by NHIAA, I would probably recommend a policy, something like, you get your teachers to agree that, sports is acceptable and that you're tempted to do your homework, and it's not the kind of people we're trying to dissuade from some force because they're not doing their homework, or the punishment aspect of it.
Have like an individual contract with some
Yeah.
of these kids and.
But unfortunately, we are sort of tied to the minimum standard.
I want to finish too, though, because
Go ahead.
no, that's totally okay. We want, in the ideal world, all of the kids that come through our school to graduate, right? That's the ideal. There's going to be kids who come through our school that, for whatever reason, don't make it all the way through to the end. And I would still think we should want those kids if they're going to fall out of the system at some point, to at least do so with the best foundation that they could have,
Sure.
right? So that way, we make the best of an already bad situation while we're trying to achieve the ideal. And I just feel like, again, to go back to, if we're more strict than the NHIAA is making us, again, I think that helps just kind of, it helps me form my opinion that I don't know that I see a benefit in being more strict than what they demand.
Yeah. Is it causing more kids to finish their courses or pass their courses? Do gun laws prevent violence, right? I mean, do shoplifting laws, I don't know, it's a philosophical question, but.
I think the only part that I, bounce around in my head is we want to make sure that we don't have students in their junior or senior year saying, wait a minute, what do you mean I thought I was all set, I was able to do this and that, and what do you mean I'm missing this many credits to graduate? And I think as adolescents, it's so tricky because you have so many different kinds of situations where you could say, oh, if you have this, we'll do this. And if you talk to this teacher, you do that. However, I don't know what kind of overall policy would allow for so many different things and to avoid a situation where all of a sudden a young individual is feeling like, wow, I did all that work for nothing, because now, they're both bad. It's your fault because you let me think everything was okay and now I'm not graduating, or it's my fault. Oh my gosh, I did all this work and now
I would hope those conversations happen.
you know,
For kids who don't do sports
But I-
or don't do, other athletic, or after-school programs. But we hope that conversation's happening.
no, I just think
Yeah.
that,
I
I
understand
think
your point, but yeah.
it's, like, I wish there was some other kind of wake-up call, and for lack of a better word, some other kind of wake-up call of like, look, like, if
And if that's the intent of the policy, then
Yeah.
that's probably a good thing.
I just,
think, like,
in my head, I'm
exclusion
trying to figure out how do you, not take away opportunities, but how do you also make sure that you are, continuing to facilitate students in the direction that they do want to go. Because we're the ones who are providing the education, and we're the ones who are saying, okay, we're going to make sure, we're going to guide you in the right track.
Right.
Because you're probably not thinking about something 3 years from now just
Yeah.
yet, but you don't want to be
If
taking,
that's the intent, I
Yeah.
fully would be on board with it. I just don't know what the intent is.
Can I suggest I bring this back
Yeah.
and review it with Jamie and Andy, kind of in light of this dialogue, and then we come back and on the 17th, you guys can do, it's your policy, you can make a decision to change it if that's what you want to do.
This has been a ton of work. Thank you so
Yep.
much for entertaining us.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
I still have a hard time justifying a fall grade diminishing the activity in the fall. Having the spring grade
determining.
determine fall eligibility when teams are coalescing,
The problem
They've
is
got
it's
the-
an NHIAA.
Yeah, it has
policy.
to be
That's
the
it,
previous.
and
We
there's
have
no-
to meet that, yeah.
and there's no way,
I don't
that
see
that
a
can-
provision around it, but.
there's no exceptions like summer school
Well-
or,
That was what I was going to ask, if we can just get clarification, does summer school count as a quarter?
Mhm. Yep.
Because the way NHIAA is written is a little bit vague in that regard.
There's an academic makeup section of B that maybe we should look at.
Okay. Again, I'm not the expert, and I don't,
I'm
I'm not sure, I want to try to reverse engineer it in real time. as we
Yeah.
sit
we
here.
have to-
I'm basically very surprised because I've followed NHIAA for years, but I've never
I think-
known that is.
Yeah, it's been the way it's been for as long as I've known.
So,
That being
that
said,
part
it
I
doesn't
missed.
necessarily make it the best way to do it.
No.
So,
because when teams are just beginning to form and the ground rules are laid, you want these kids to be a part of that beginning. It's always hard to come in at the end. So, if there's something that can be made up, that'd be great.
Yep. We'll take a look at it, and we can bring it back to talk about in July.
All right, thank you. Anything else before we move on from JJ?
Sue's probably gonna leave, like, she thinks every meeting's gonna be like this.
You
All right.
still haven't changed barring to bear.
We've got through one.
I promise you, the next one is so dry that nobody will have an easy time thinking of something to comment. Policy EHBR, this is the data records retention policy. This is, I kid you not, 15 or 16 pages of unbelievably dense text about how long you should keep various types of records before disposing of them.
As I was reading this, I got myself a cup of coffee.
And I would tell you that Julie Kuchenberger, our assistant BA, has gone through this top to bottom, and this is based on what we need to do, so it's definitely been vetted through internal practice.
Yeah, any commentary or questions about that one?
Do we use anything like a data shredder? I forget what, I passed by one. There was one that came to my office.
Talking about a paper shredder?
No, it was like for CDs and electronic records and all. What's it called? Advanced data.
I mean, when we're disposing of
When we're
any kind of material that has sensitive data.
We,
Yeah.
we dispose of things properly,
Yeah.
that's what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so next on the agenda, the safety and health manual and the safety plan update.
Yeah, I mean, this is an annual process. We have a committee called the Joint Loss Management Committee. They meet regularly to monitor accident reports and all that kind of stuff, and every year they review our safety plan and make updates as required by law and/or by experience. And every year they make a recommendation, and the board's role is to approve it each year. So if anybody has any questions about it, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I didn't personally see anything as I went through it that jumped off the page at me as looking out of the ordinary.
It seemed pretty reasonable, yeah.
It's, all the things that we get email, video trainings on at work, basically.
I was rereading the memo. I apologize, it's reviewed every 2 years. I'm sorry, but everything else I said is true.
Okay. How about then, and did anyone have anything separate on the safety plan document? Okay. All right, next on the agenda then is the employee handbook updates. Those were sent out for everybody's consideration, nearly a week ago now at this point, I guess.
Monday, actually.
Monday.
I have to admit, we didn't
Okay.
get it out as we promised. I apologize. So yeah, it went out on Monday. Just to remind people, the employee handbook, we did not have one prior to the 23-24 school year. We had a hodgepodge of different rules and regulations, but we didn't have one document that covered all employment groups. So spring of 2024, a committee of, 15 or 16 people went through and took us 6 months, but we created a single employee handbook, and we review it annually. So this was the first annual review. Most of the changes that are being recommended are either because laws changed or page numbers had to change because of spacing, dates changed for some very simple reasons, but there was no, Gary, you were on that committee, there was no substantive changes for the most part. It was,
People became person, and this
Yep.
URL changed, and this one moved somewhere else. Yeah, it's 64 pages, of very intriguing. I mean, I highly recommend reading it, but,
I like where accommodations was changed to accommodation. Actually, a better one was right above that, I'm sorry, retaliation with a semicolon. It was changed to retaliation with a semicolon.
oh, there we go. Well, you can see the subtle change there. Right?
Yeah.
probably space. I think, yeah.
So much finesse.
The dryness, just to say, the dryness is real. But
All right, any other questions or commentary on this one? Going once, going twice? All right then. end-of-year financial discussion. We have 4 documents on this one that I'd invite Todd
Yeah,
or others that he would like to bring
so I-
into the discussion.
So, yeah, so let me start. The first document there is the interim financial report. As you should recall, we started a conversation about our financial situation pretty early this year. Jana had, we did the quarterly report at the end of March that kind of estimated what we thought our year-end fund balance was going to be. We did another one in April, and then this is the most recent one, which includes through May 31st. Obviously, we're not 100% at the end, but this is an update of the last report. I would draw your attention to page 4 of this document, which kind of gives you an idea of what Jana, as of May 31, had estimated our year-end fund balance to be. And so she had estimated $892,391. If you're saying to yourself, that's less than what we had projected in April, you are correct. The projection in April was $973,000. There were some additional special ed costs that came out of that, so that number was adjusted down. But that is a pretty solid number at this point for us to begin to make some of our year-end financial decisions. If you look at page 3, you can see the expenditure by category analysis, and you can see that we have $721,801 favorable in all of our various expenses. That additional $67,000 is the revenue side of the equation, which brings us to that $892,000 level. Questions, thoughts? Again, this is an update of what was shared with you before. It's important to keep in mind that we're still processing a lot. In fact, Sue, you and I were talking about how much encumbrances we had, like 660,000-ish. We anticipate that not all of that will be expended, so this number could go up a little bit from there, but 892, which is on page 4, 892,391 is a pretty safe place for us to begin discussions of how we want to do things, because the big decisions we have to make, one is retained fund balance, which we'll talk about in a minute. The second one is whether or not we want to use any of the fund balance at the end of this year to offset any costs for next year. And then the third one is, okay, how much do we want to return to the taxpayers to offset taxes? So those are the 3 big decisions that we need to talk about tonight. Questions about this statement, though, and just what it tells us?
So you characterize the biggest change since the last time we looked at this as having to do with special ed. I mean, definitely without getting into any particular person's particular situation. Is that just invoices that came in that we hadn't anticipated, or?
We have some things that changed in terms of out-of-district placements that occurred after the fourth quarter of the year began.
Okay.
That was not able to be incorporated into the April statement.
Okay.
Any other comments on that statement? So that was really for just a pure informational purpose. So the other things that are here, these are all reports that you have seen before, and so I'm just going to go through them in order because we have, like I say, we have some decisions to make. The first one is the retained fund balance report that Jana gave to you on May 14th. So to refresh your memory, we have the capacity as a school district to retain up to 5% of our operating budget in what's called a retained fund. Currently, we from the 23-24 year, we retained 3.5%. Okay, that basically is about $767,000. That's what we retained last year. Jana had made the recommendation to us that we consider increasing the retained fund balance, because again, we can go as high as 5%. Without trying to rehash all of the challenging financial conversations we've had over the last few months, we know that there's some uncertainty out there, and certainly increasing the retained fund balance might be in our best interest to allow us to be able to guard against unexpected expenses. So again, Jana was recommending we bump it up to 4%. In order to do that, if you look at the calculation here that she's provided, we would need to have $913,965 go into the fund, and that would be basically an increase of bear with me while I find the exact number, an increase of $146,808,000. So what that means is the fund balance we were just talking about, combined with what's already there, 767, we need to take 148,000 of that fund balance, add it to that to get to that place where we have a retained fund balance of 4%. Obviously, it is entirely up to you as a board as to where you want to go, and 4% is the recommendation, but you could choose to do 5%, you could choose to do 3.5%, you could choose to do 3.75, you can choose to do anything. But again, the recommendation that I would make is to look to move it up to 4%.
So just check and make sure I've got the math right here. We 892 unexpended. We started with 746 in fund balance. So if we want to kick that up to 4, we take 146,000 out of the 892 unexpended. That leaves us right at $750,000 to either return to taxpayers or for other warrant articles that we might fund
Right.
from.
And it's important to keep in mind that we also are obligated $265,000 in, we had 2 warrant articles, one for the capital improvement, that was $200,000, and $65,000 for the special ed trust fund. So we need to make sure we account for that
All
too.
right, so about $500,000 then.
So it gets us down to
Yeah.
about $500,000, and I've said multiple times that's typically where we end the year. That's, and from a tax impacts point of view, being consistent with what is returned to taxpayers is a good thing, so you don't see spikes in tax rate setting.
Right.
4% leaves us about that $500,000 to be able to return. That's
Correct.
okay.
But that brings us to the other conversation, which is we had talked about whether we wanted to use any of the year-end fund balance to fund anything that might benefit us in the fiscal year 25-26. If you look at the report, the options for encumbrances that was shared with you on May 9th, if you recall, we had the healthcare costs obviously came in higher than we were anticipating. So we know we've got about $150,000 in additional healthcare costs we need to cover. So the conversation at the board table at that time was, hey, what might be some options that we might be able to leverage 24-25 funds to our benefit. So certainly one of the things you can't do is go on a spending frenzy of things that you didn't budget for. You can't just say, gee, let's just start spending money willy-nilly, because that's not an ethical way to manage your fund balance. However, things that you already have in play, it would be completely reasonable to consider doing that. So one of the things that we could consider doing, there's 3 options that Jana kind of laid out. One is paying for some portion of the window project, which, by the way, the window project is well underway. I think all the windows actually are installed. They're just in the process of doing all the window sashes and all that stuff. So, so the project is already underway. This is at the elementary school, not here. And the total cost, that's $255,000. We had decided we were going to take that out of our capital reserve fund, but one option would be paying some of that out of this year, and then not have to take as much out of the trust fund next year, which might give us the flexibility to say, we reduce the amount we ask voters to put in the capital funds next year in order to mitigate things. So that would be one option. Other things we could consider doing in that same vein would be any of the severance, which we don't actually have. Thank you. We don't actually have a lot. We only have one retiree actually this year, and it's $16,000, so it really wouldn't make that big of a difference, but we could choose to do that out of this year. And then the third option she outlined was maybe we just tap our benefits trust fund, which has $129,000. That would cover most of the differential. So kind of going back to your point, yes, if we don't do any of those things, that your math absolutely works.
Can I ask hypothetically if we picked option 3 with the expendable trust, the $130,000, like what would a typical taxpayer, like what would that difference be in terms of?
You can roughly assume, and we've talked about this, when the reevaluation really screwed up the easy mental math. We used to be able to do it really simply, but the new evaluation, basically, every $100,000 is about 6 cents on the tax rate. So $130,000 is like 7.5 cents. So times the average home is $650,000. 650 times 7.5 cents is
10% would be.
not.
I did the quick math just sitting here, so $500,000 is 29 cents.
Okay.
In round numbers on the tax rate, so that's, you know, what, that would be the starting point before we did anything else, is we mitigate next year's tax rate by 29 cents out of, where are we now?
Well, the current rate for this year was $13.24.
Yeah.
With all the things that passed, we'd projected it at $13.90
Sounds about
something,
right.
96, I want to say. But obviously, if you reduce that by 29 cents, then you're talking 13.60 something.
Yeah, that sounds
the
about
rate.
right, because before the reval, we were 22-ish, 23 maybe.
I'm just trying to think like the benefit of
Well,
the
the-
$130,000 versus the
Right.
potential benefit of getting.
Yeah.
The
the
thing
few
about
dollars
the
back.
130, that is something you don't have to, if you say, we can tap into that at any time, because it's an expendable trust fund. You have the authority to do that. So you can, we don't necessarily need to say we're doing that. We can just say, let's see how it goes, and then maybe in May we decide we do. So we don't have to do that up front, but it does give us some sort of safeguard against that. If we're going to do the window project and/or retirement, we'd have to decide that
No.
now, yeah.
I mean, I'm very comfortable doing the 16,500 of retirement severance. That's a no-brainer to me, but it's also barely moves the needle. So, I mean, the real question is what do we do with the windows, which I think Todd said this, I'll say it in slightly different words, is impactful because we have a plan that says we're putting, you know, year by year by year, here's what we're putting in the trust fund for essentially capital replenishment on these buildings, and you can defer part of that from next year's warrants.
Yes, what we're doing is saving the money, right, from next year.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly, so it's,
So would we elect to, if you did the windows, 165,000
No.
or 89?
89.5, I think it is.
250.
250, okay. Because we definitely will tap into the capital reserve trust funds, just not by as much.
Yeah.
And what it does is it buys us flexibility later on, and it gives us some freedom to ask ourselves, what's the amount we want to put in next year?
So, we're getting into nickels and dimes. I shouldn't say that because it is a lot of money, doesn't matter if you look at it, but the other thing to look at is changing the retained fund balance to something like 3.75. So 3.5 would be $100,000, $113,000 less. So if we wanted to offset some of those other changes we're proposing, we could change the retained fund balance a little bit. If we still want to try to maintain the 500,000, we're estimating going back to the tax rate.
Yeah, you definitely can do that. You can just yeah, like 375 or something, yeah. That, so splitting the difference between that's, yeah, it's reduces it by $57,000.
Yeah, so,
So we do 375, we put that 57 against the windows, or, sorry, I'm just, connect the
the
dots
windows
for me.
/ the retirement,
Okay,
yeah, and we wouldn't cover all of it, but it would
and then that lets us hold the line on the $500,000 going,
hold it a little bit more.
okay,
We'd still be dipping into it a little bit.
a little bit, yeah.
And again-
It's a small amount, though,
Yeah.
relatively.
And it's entirely possible we'd have, like I said, 661,000 in encumbrances. It's entirely likely not all of that is going to be spent, so
Now,
it's a
bear
safe
in
bet
mind-
there'll be some more in the fund balance.
Bear in mind, if we do have to use up the health trust fund, the insurance trust fund, and anything happens crazy next year with health insurance, which I can't imagine would ever happen.
Yeah, things have been pretty
Hypothetically.
stable for the last week and a half, so I can't
Yeah.
imagine
It's
that would
not like
change.
it happened 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, so, yeah, we wouldn't have that trust fund, not like it.
Right, I
Yeah.
mean, but on the flip side, however, I'll channel Phil over here for a minute. You don't put money in a trust fund because you intend for it to stay there forever looking pretty.
Sure.
This is the kind of situation that we
Yeah.
created that trust fund in anticipation of, and just the question is,
Will the situation be worse next
well,
time?
yeah.
Right.
Is that whitewater we're seeing up there the end of the rapids, or do we
Right.
go around the
Exactly.
bend in the river and there's
That's-
more rapids?
That's,
Exactly.
that's where my caution comes in on that.
Yeah.
One thing that's probably worth keeping in mind, and it may very well be that the SB 297, the pooled insurance coverage thing, fizzles out and goes away.
Yeah.
But if the provision that exists now, that requires us to maintain a 4% reserve fund ourselves, 129 is roughly 4% of our costs.
Yeah.
So if we are required to do that, we would almost immediately need to build that back up again. So it's just something to keep in mind that it might be flexibility, but it also might not be flexibility depending on how the law changes. But again, as I said before, part of the reason to build up your retained fund balance is to guard against uncertainty. There's a little more, the retained fund balance, you can't just spend it because you want to. There's a whole process you have to go through, and you have to hold hearings and all that kind of stuff. But certainly, if we had a cataclysmic spike in insurance costs, that would be a very legitimate reason to tap into it.
I mean, I guess I'm inclined to roll the dice a little bit with that. My inclination, my hunch is that having one less insurer in the state is gonna cause rates to go up more than they may have gone up otherwise, but, yeah, I think I'm probably fine with that,
With what?
with leaving, the insurance as is.
Yeah, yeah.
I do like the idea of being also as close to what's consistent with
Yeah.
what's.
There's no consistency
returned.
right now with the
No, I mean
state.
with what's being
With the
returned,
insurance
yeah.
fund,
Yeah, but,
To
I'm-
the taxpayers,
yeah,
but-
yeah, this keeps us a little more secure because we don't know
Mhm.
what's gonna happen.
No, I've never had any taxpayer come up to me and say, thank you for saving me 50 cents in the taxpayer number, so bear that in mind, you're probably not gonna get accolades, but.
Yeah.
It is
Shame
a
it's
great
been a
thing to do.
while, though. I mean,
All
Yeah.
right, so let's try to put some numbers to this then, to get to something we can actually vote on at the end of the evening.
So we propose that we spend to $16,500
Severance.
severance payments for retirees, and that we put, how much are we taking out of the windows?
Oh, it was 89,250 was what we were.
We've already transferred that.
that's what's already been done, it looks like.
But it's the issue is we have to account for it in fiscal year 24, 25.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So what happened is we had to, it's already been done, but what we haven't done is draw the trust fund.
So we haven't encumbered.
So it would be,
them
it
for this
would be
year.
on the revenue side. So we've already,
Okay.
we had to pay the bill.
So we have to encumber them for this budget.
So basically what you're saying is, what you want us to do is to not plan to draw the trust fund down by 89,250, and we leave that as a future thing
Yep.
for us,
And pay for it out of this year's budget.
and
yeah.
pay it out of this year's budget, which has
Yeah.
already happened. We just have to,
Yep.
you're basically instructing us to do nothing. We've
There
already
you
done
go.
it. Okay, we like,
Making life easier, left and right.
so the only difference that I'm hearing in terms of 24, 25
Is the 16.
is paying the 16.5 severance out of that, so you would like us to do that?
And then the retained fund balance, we proposed 3.75 versus the 4%
Okay.
recommended. Or we would approve, I guess, 4 recommended.
Okay.
All right, I think I know what I need to
Going to make that
ask,
motion?
ask for a motion for at,
What he said.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time I did that.
So to be clear, just to be clear of what we're talking about, so if we do 3.75 for the retained fund balance, that's a number around $856,000. So that's, you're telling me that's what you want to have go in the retained fund balance, right?
yeah,
Well, assuming you vote this way, I'm just trying to be clear. And then what we will pay the 16.5 in severance out of 24, 25.
Yep.
And the bill that's already been paid will allow to be accounted for in the 24, 25 cycle.
Yep.
But what we won't know exactly until all the dust settles on the year is exactly what's left that goes back to taxpayers. It will likely be a number of 500,000, but it could be more than that.
right. So the
Okay.
only two things we actually need to vote on then is funding the severance out of 24, 25
Correct.
and the 3.75 fund
Correct.
balance. The rest of it just falls out.
Correct.
It falls out in the math and from the fact that we won't vote to take 89,250 out of the trust fund.
Correct.
God, I love it, Linda.
Plan comes together.
Makes sense.
A-team quote, check.
Okay.
And Jana made it easy and said we can get this, ask for a formal motion authorizing to implement one of the strategies selected, so we can say strategy 2. And strategy.
I don't know, let's
strategy
actually
1.
put the words
You
in
wanna
the
do that?
minutes.
All right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Strategy
all right.
1 and strategy 2.
The last item under this omnibus heading is the
Meal debt.
recommendation for the write-off on the meal debt, which,
Which is really low this year.
People are just paying their meal. I would say one of the things that has happened this year that I'm very pleased with is our Bryant Lee and Julie Kuchenberger are two of our business office employees, have really been actively communicating with families, and I think there's been a lot more lunch debt paid off just as a matter of making people aware of it. So I think we're in a slightly better place. I think last year the number was 7,600 and something, and this year it's 60.
Yeah, I thought it was 13, or maybe it was a couple years ago. Anyways.
So obviously, just for a matter of practice, we don't have any choice to write. We have to account for it. So writing it off is something you do every year. It doesn't mean that we stop trying to collect the debt after the new year, by the way. So if people owe money, we continue to try until some point down the road when they graduate. And so those are the big end of year financial things. So clearly you have what you need then to
Yeah.
do that, Dan? Okay, great.
I am good on that one. All right, last discussion item, 26, 27 budget goals. We have the level service budget that we've been all staring at with varying degrees of dismay for a bit now. We've all had some time to think about it and what the administration is looking for to come out of this evening is, feedback. Where's the board's comfort level? What should they be shooting for? Which, is not to say definitively that they can get there, but just to help their thinking as they start to do the internal process of developing next year's budget.
And I do want to remind you that this was a financial analysis that was done, largely 18 months before. So keep in mind the notions that it was based upon. In some cases, some of them have changed. For example, energy cost has not spiked up the way a lot of people predicted it would. It still might, but if we redid the assumptions, we might have different assumptions baked in. The big things to keep in mind as you are thinking about next year, there are a number of pieces of legislation coming out of the state that have the potential to have some impact on us financially. This year, we did have some financial shortfall, special education shortfalls in terms of revenue and reimbursements. And that was the big topic that we discussed. I just lost my train of thought.
That said, if you could help us think correctly about, what we put in front of the voters is a budget. What can we spend? It's sort of the tax rate piece of it, of how much do we get in various grants and whatever. Not that we shouldn't be cognizant of it.
Right.
However, that's something the
Right.
DOR sorts out at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
revenues
set
is
the
not,
tax
you don't need to
rate.
worry about that. What you need to do is,
Yeah.
you're asking the voters to authorize the expenditure of
Right.
X for next, just to remind you, the voters approved budget that's just slightly, with the teacher contract, it's slightly more than $29 million is what we're authorized to spend for 25-26. And so you're trying to say,
4%, was that?
say that again?
Was it 4%?
That ended up being about 4.3.
Yeah.
I mean,
Last year, we asked, the administration to try to keep the increase below 2%. They, one, didn't laugh at us, and two, managed to keep it under.
197.
197,
Magical.
so,
Reminded that was with setting the teacher contract as a separate item.
yeah.
So with the
Which is how
teacher
we got up to
contract,
the
they got
4.3.
4.3, yeah.
So
But the teacher contract in these numbers, para contract is not.
I definitely appreciate the line of sight on where we see energy going now, but obviously that's not the thing that's driving the big numbers here.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
It's out of district
Yeah.
placement, special ed costs,
Staff.
yeah, healthcare is a big one.
And who's to say the inflation rate is going to be?
So
When does
tuition,
this job become fun? I'm waiting for
What's that?
what year this job becomes fun? I'm waiting for that to happen.
I'll let you know when it happens.
Yeah, please.
Do you know what obviously I am aware that the level services budget is shocking, well, maybe not so shocking, but a big number and a big percentage. What it roundabout has been?
I'm not sure you understand the question.
Oh, in previous years,
Yes.
what percentage?
We have been,
Those we
in
asked for.
in the 3 years that Jana and I built budgets together, the total was between 4 and 4.5. That was pretty typical. I mean, as Gary said, last year, we knew we had a teacher contract that was going to be pricey, so we set the operational goal at 2%. Looking at these numbers, I mean, I agree with everybody that that's a scary thing to think, like, if we just keep doing what we're doing, it's going to go up 8.82%. I think Jana would also have agreed with me that this is a fairly pessimistic assumption.
I don't think you'd get her to admit that.
She knew she was throwing darts at a dartboard when she made this. It's one of those things, like I say,
Very
18 months
conservative.
out to predict particularly given the climate around health insurance, it's
Yeah.
like, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, this is not the assumptions.
So
I guess we just wouldn't want to come up with something that we were comfortable with if it wasn't even potentially feasible.
well,
Well, that's
the
for us
word.
to find
Yeah.
feasible, right? I mean, are we okay with staff cuts? Can we do staff cuts and have 24 kids in a classroom and be okay? Does the administration think there's room for them to absorb some staffing cuts without changing anything based on blocks or shifting how positions are utilized, or? these
Yeah,
are
I'm just saying.
discussions that-
and I would also just say, at this point, you're giving us a target to start shooting for. You will engage heavily in this process in September and October. And if there's things that if you let's say, pick a number, let's say you tell me 5%, and we create a 5% budget, and we show it with you, and you say, I'm not comfortable with what you've done to do that, then you tell us that. And then we go back and we have a conversation. Maybe we can't hit the 5%, maybe, so you're not locking into something, you're just giving some guidance to the administrative team to start our process. And I'm going to tell you right now, my instructions to the team are going to be, hey, look, we need to have as lean a budget as we can while we still provide all the things we know are needed. So we're gonna have that approach anyway. And as far as staffing decisions are concerned, this has been our process as long as I've been here. Positions become available, we have a conversation about it. We ask ourselves, do we need this position as currently constituted? If the answer is yes, we fill it. If it's not, we then ask the question, is there some other purpose that we need to address that we could repurpose this for? If that answer is no, we don't fill the position. And we have successfully done a lot of adjusting of staffing levels in a way that has not been negatively impactful to the outcome. It's just we're asking those questions as we go. We have to accept the fact that we have a declining enrollment. We don't have as many students as we did 10 years ago. The staffing levels, it's appropriate that you ask those questions. But that's what we've done all along. So you're giving me a goal doesn't mean you're locking in on anything. It just means you're saying, Todd, we'd like to see you try to do, and you fill in the blank. And then we start doing that work over the summer. And then in the fall, we sit down and we say, okay, here's what we've come up with. And you guys weigh in at that point.
Yes, okay, sorry.
No, please, because I'm
Yeah.
about to.
I'm not sure how to say this, but I think we really need to, we as a board need to realize that situations are different this year. Sure, economically and everywhere, but also within our administrative staff and what we ask them to take on as part of this process while they're still grieving and dealing with this immense hardship is something we do need to consider as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
what I was gonna say was I'll start the bidding at a range of 4 to 4.5. And that would, again, the para contract is not the huge mover that the teacher's contract was, because the absolute numbers are just smaller.
Right.
But because the things that are going through my head as I look at this, so every $300,000 in this increase column is about a percentage point. That's not exactly right, but it's fairly close to the right numbers. The tuition number weirds me out. I'm struggling to see how that goes up 20%.
Well, it's the placements, right? Out of district.
Yeah, that includes.
So
other
that's
districts.
both special ed and vocational?
Yep, it's lumped it all together, yeah.
I see, okay. But the SST piece of it, I kind of struggle to imagine that it's gonna punch at its weight in that amalgamated number. Again, that doesn't solve everything, but it's just one place that jumps out at me. We do have to look at one of two things is going to happen. Either fewer kids are gonna go to SST, so we'll probably need to keep more staff in the building, or the SST numbers, they're at a bit of a lull this year. They're gonna rebound, which means arguably we need less staff in the building.
But I mean, as Andy said, it doesn't really change their staffing, because you still have to have the people there for the times those kids are here. Right, it's not like you can say, okay, let's hire 15 part-time teachers, because we know that we're not gonna have kids here for
Yeah,
whatever
but it
law.
does change the average class sizes that we're shooting for, and as we look at scheduling, that's where we're
I
gonna
don't think
have
it
to.
provides a lot of, I mean, correct me please if I'm wrong, but I thought Andy said it doesn't really affect this, nothing a ton.
I mean, you can make incremental adjustments based upon demand for particular courses. If like, say, for example, there are fewer kids who want to take an environmental science class, then maybe there's room to say, we need a .8 science teacher instead of a full-time. But I would
But then
agree
you're
that it's
gonna
not.
hire somebody for .8.
Correct,
you know.
correct. Yeah, I mean, it is challenging to do that, no question about it. But it's not going to be a massive shift until we do something structurally different with the whole program. And we are starting down that road with a new master schedule, which I think is going to use people more efficiently, and maybe that will create, separate from that, maybe it will create opportunities for conversations.
The other one that really jumps off the page is professional services for students. How does that, I mean, we're assuming that tuition goes way up for out-of-district placements. We're assuming that professional services goes way up, which is for in-district.
Some
Is
of
that
it.
Contract service?
Some of it, it's be like, it's like, for example, we have a number of paras that we've had to hire through like Easter Seals and other places. So that there's those due to our inability to hire our own. There's also like behavioral consultants. We've had a psychologist at the elementary school this year who's been, because we could not fill the school psych position at the elementary school this year. We had a contracted person through Constellations, thank you, through Constellations. So that's where that is. And there is one of those, like, for example, the students that are not even our students that go to like Great Bay Charter School, there are services that we provide over there that we have to contract to provide to the tune of $75,000 or $80,000 a year. So will it go up as much as is there? You may be right, it may not go up that much.
Yeah, I understand all of the above. What worries me a little is, we've got two fairly large numbers that each have 2 sigma worth of risk built into them. Now you've got about a 3.5 to 4 sigma at the bottom line, which is any given one of those assumptions freestanding may be realistic, but you combine them all together and you've created an unrealistic.
Yeah.
Well, pivot from what you had said earlier, to start throwing numbers out there, just to have maybe targets to see what that does for opening up conversation. Because I imagine that in and of itself, that'll get people looking at numbers, and that's going to drive a lot of dialogue, right? So I would also probably default to somewhere around that 4% range for like, what would it look like if we try to hit that, and how realistic do we think it is, and how do we adjust from there as we see fit?
I mean, the way I feel like I have a little more faith going into this year. I was flat out scared going into budget season last year. I think we all were to some greater or lesser extent. And, what we found was a broadly reasonable response to a very good job that you and your team did in explaining the why that went into all the things that we're doing. Maybe that's left me too optimistic, but it has left me optimistic that, that if we do a good job of explaining how we're getting to the point that we're at, because the other thing that goes hand in glove with all of this is in this world of consistent 3 and 4% annual inflation, we're not going to be able to stick to 2 or 3 forever. And to some extent, the longer you stick to that, the worse the snapback is going to be at some point in the future. It's very similar to the narrative that Steve Fournier, the town manager, lays out all the time. We kick the can on problems for years and years and years, and then it all catches up with you at once. And that's also probably not a place I want to put us in, because that will be the year that the number on the ballot is just so striking that people can't swallow it.
Right. 2 things that, from the state level, that, of course, I've been tracking is, what's the status on open enrollment?
Your guess is as good as mine right now. I mean, it's certainly gotten a lot of positive attention from both houses of the legislature. Yeah, I
Because
don't.
that could really impact us a lot.
I think that's one of those ones that if it goes into effect, we won't even be able to begin to comprehend the impact until we start to see it.
Right?
And that's where I think having the
And I think
retained
every
fund
year
balance.
will be different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of those things, it's going to be very difficult to project.
Any
I-
word on vouchers as far as the public school students leaving for private school?
There has been
Anything?
some, they have, I mean, again, the proof is going to be who shows up at our
Right.
doors when we reach the fall. I was in the first month since AOT signed the universal voucher.
First week.
First week, they had 2,000
2,000.
students across the state in addition to what was already there. So my guess is the number that has been, they've capped it for the first year at
10,000.
10,000. So I suspect they're going to hit that, which means that, what is it, 27 million additional cost is probably likely. I would say the big thing that I'm optimistic about is the one thing that there's a lot of agreement on is funding special ed cost. And I think that, it looks like that's going to happen. Last year, we got only 68% of our catastrophic aid, and everything I've heard, 80% is what they're going to do, which is what they had promised us before.
Okay.
And when they didn't deliver on it, we were short $200,000. So this does seem that that's a positive. Of course, the other thing to keep in mind is there's a number of other things that are out there that could potentially impact us. The tax cap thing is
Oh,
still
yeah.
hanging out
That's still
there.
hanging around?
And frankly, if the tax cap thing goes into effect, our budget goal discussion is
Done.
irrelevant
Yeah.
because we're going to have to go lower than what our goal is. The tax cap would limit us to about 4.1 if that were to happen.
4-1,
Percent.
or we'd have to get a supermajority on
Correct.
election day.
Correct.
So, but which is no small thing, but worth pointing out at least.
Yeah. And what was the other one, the tax cap, the vouchers, the open enrollment, and the,
I've lost my train of thought. See, I can tell my brain is tired.
well, sure.
Keep talking amongst yourselves. I'll remember.
And
Kathy,
special
do you have
ed.
anything else?
No.
No. Yeah, I'm comfortable with the 4% that's been discussed. Do we want to put any conditions around that? Like, class sizes can't change, sports don't change, kind of status quo, or is there things that we're comfortable with to hit that 4%?
Without things changing, I don't see how you get there. Right, so where do you
would be
want
comfortable
to,
changing?
where do you want to put the guardrails?
Yeah.
That's what,
And is that helpful? I assume
Well,
we think
I mean, I guess, certainly we have had staffing guidelines. We've never adopted it as board policy, but we've had staffing guidelines that we've been encouraged to follow. K through 2, 18 is the max. We try to be that level. And every other level, it's maximum of 24. That's what we've had as our guidelines. If those guidelines are not something you want to support, then certainly it might help having some conversation about it. But I will tell you, we've never even remotely come close to hitting those. So that doesn't concern me. I'd be lying to you if you say come in at 4%, there is going to have to be a staffing impact.
the question is, can that be absorbed, I guess,
Correct.
without
And I-
affecting students?
and I
Or
think-
are we comfortable with affecting students?
right.
And I think that's the conversation we can have as we build the process. And you guys saying 4% isn't scaring me. I mean, we can do it. In the early side of this is a mathematical exercise of going through a process. And then once we see what it means, you can always say, well, no, don't do that. And we can always extricate it. Just have to deal with what that additional cost means.
Yeah, I guess maybe you got a point there. We shouldn't overthink it too much at this stage of the game where,
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to say 4%, but you can't change anything.
Yeah.
No, you can't say you only get solar power, but it
Yeah.
has to work 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
You gotta live in physical reality.
Yeah. You were going to say something?
I was just thinking that the 1.97, but then you included the teacher contract, got us to
4.3.
I was gonna say a little under 4.5. I know, I recognize I'm asking for like estimates from outer space. Like, obviously it wouldn't be a 2%, I mean, it wouldn't be another additional 2% with the para contract.
So unfortunately, the more we discuss that in public, the less, I don't want to say leverage.
Yeah.
It's not really appropriate because we don't want to set ourselves in a kind of corner when we do negotiate the contract.
Mhm.
So try not to do that.
I think, just leave that contract outside of it, and then
Yeah.
to what are we comfortable with separate from that, yeah. I remembered what I was going to say, just Kathy, I just want to let you know. The other thing to keep in mind is the court has ruled on the swept
Right.
tax. And it's, so basically, what that signals to me is that the legislature will lean heavily on that to make up their adequacy expenses, which effectively does nothing to
No.
relieve the tax rate locally. So basically, you can say it's local property tax, but it's like, well, this is the part that's coming from the state,
Yeah.
and this is the part that Newmarket is collecting. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
because everybody's paying the same thing.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments on this particular one?
And if you're comfortable giving me a goal tonight, that's great. If you're not,
I think 4%
okay, you're,
was it. Did anyone disagree? Like, two people had already said it, and I agreed, so
Yeah.
that's majority anyways, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think it's a
And then we'll see what kind of damage we
good
with that
what,
one.
what you've
starting
reached-
place, I
what
guess.
havoc you've wreaked.
How many rolls of toilet paper are in our house? Oh,
Yeah.
it's too expensive. Eggs are too expensive.
What's that?
That's because people aren't gonna throw toilet paper or eggs at our house because it's too expensive, but,
At least we've got that going for us.
Tomatoes are pretty cheap, though.
yeah, that's true.
Doggone it.
The more we talk
all
about
right.
stuff like that publicly, the more likely it is to happen.
So we have now exhausted our discussion items, so let's move on and acknowledge two very generous donations. The first one being in the amount, it's two pieces. There's a donation, all of this is from NCEP, by the way, in the amount of $741.88 to the Library Innovative Space, which was requested by Jennifer Brokazian, the media specialist at the elementary school. And the second one in this check was to the junior, senior high school for $500 to fund a guest speaker that was requested by Nicole St. James, one of our grade 7 teachers, so.
And if I could just quickly
Yeah.
point out, because the check was one check, the accountants will require us to approve it because it's more than $1,000. So just know you need to, even though it's two separate things, it's a one donation from our perspective.
Okay. And the second one is a very generous donation, again from NCEP, of $670.25 for 7th grade science stool backs, which was requested by Andrea Frey, one of our science teachers. I'm sure that will make it much more comfortable for the kids to sit in her classroom, so.
The hunch over their
Less falling
telescopes,
off.
Yeah.
microscope.
Leaning
I
back.
had
Thank
no
you.
idea you could buy stool bags.
I know.
I looked at it twice, I'm like,
See, being on this board, you learn things all the time. All right, action items. I would accept a motion to approve the minutes from our June 5th, 2025 meeting.
well, I apologize for not reading them, but I also don't see them.
They are,
as a
They are in
document.
view minutes.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
go.
Why am I not getting it?
I read them and
Are you logged in?
Yeah. Oh, I'm fine. Thought I did them before, so.
the only thing was meeting was adjourned at, and there was no time.
Does anybody know the
At
time?
9 PM, that's right.
That time PM.
let me see, I actually,
There's no reason those shouldn't be public, even though they're draft. I
yeah,
think by law they have to be public, even though they're draft.
Hold on.
let me look, sometimes I.
I think they
look
are.
for myself in here.
Anybody accessing the agenda?
Computers are hard.
Are
That is
you,
the-
you're not
I
able
see
to?
them now that are refreshed.
Yeah, mine weren't coming up either,
Let
that's
me see if I
odd.
can log out.
I'm
Yeah,
seeing
it took me
them.
a while to find mine.
Let me log out and see what happens.
Oh, wait, here they are, in mine, I just, for some reason, it wasn't underlined. My recollection was the last meeting was a
It's pretty quick, because we.
Pretty good.
relatively short one.
Yeah, if you're logged out, they don't show, and they should,
Okay.
like, by law, I guess.
Tell you what, we can go in and actually
Look at the
check the
video.
video and get the exact time,
Mm.
because it's time stamped, so it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so we'll
And it was
defer.
about 6:30, because that's when we walked in there. so.
Yeah, we all went to the awards thing.
All right, so we'll defer acting on that until the next meeting.
Or do you want to approve it with the idea that we'll just add the time?
Yeah, I'm fine with
okay.
that too.
Yeah.
So I'd accept a motion to approve the minutes from the June 5, 2025 meeting, subject to inserting the correct time of adjournment.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you, Lonnie. Thank you, Kathy.
I'll second it.
This is the point where I need to actually get my sheet out and start making note of who moves. Actually, no. Ellen's been quite good about reading that off of the, or being able to get that. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are unanimous
You
on.
actually have one friendly correction, if you could. There's committee updates. Apparently, it says Gary Swanson and Lonnie Stebbins went to our final committee meeting. And it says committee work will continue, but Gary expressed appreciation for being involved in the meeting and the dedication of.
Oh,
Probably said something like, those involved. I'm assuming.
We'll go back
all
and redo.
members.
Yeah.
All right, so we will approve the minutes with those corrections to be provided.
I do remember that I actually had to repeat everything I said at that point.
You're right.
So I think that perhaps
That's
the
right.
sound wasn't,
You're right.
quality wasn't great.
Don't know if it benefits the public in any way to know this, but we, kind of unusual for us, we didn't all sign the manifest before the meeting.
Hold
and
on
I'm
a second.
not-
Actually,
Yeah, I'm not seeing the cover.
I got
sheet
it,
with
I
the
got it,
doors
I got it,
and
I got it, I got it, right here. Hold on.
all. All right.
Tracy handed it to me as I went out the office, and she said, whoops, I forgot to put it in the folder. So there it is.
I will make a motion that we approve the manifest in the amount of $2,086,171.80.
Second.
Thank you, Gary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we're unanimous on that one. Just make sure a couple of us sign that before we go this evening. I would accept a motion to approve the generous NCEP donation of $1,241.88, split between two items at the elementary school and the high school.
So,
Thank you, Gary.
second.
Second from Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Very unanimous. We are going to table Policy JJIB until the next meeting, so,
Can I just bring up because you brought up about the academic makeups in the NHIAA policy,
Okay.
and it says a student may regain eligibility by making up academic deficiencies, failures, or incompletes of regular school year through academic credit recovery programs completed prior to the first date of play, to play in a sport. So I'm not sure if that has.
We'll take a look at it. Yeah.
brilliant.
That
Yeah, it
is, I think page 2 of how I looked it up was academic recovery. So then it goes on to talk about incompletes and special education. So there is,
Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking at 24, 25, so I don't know if this is.
oh, this is
coming up.
21-22 handbook, so.
Yeah, but it says
so,
the same thing.
yeah.
I think it says the same.
Yeah,
Yeah, academic recovery, yeah, it
Yeah.
says the same things. I don't
Yeah.
know if the new year says it.
yeah. So, anyway, I cheated on my meeting a little bit, looked that up.
And I'm just gonna apologize to the world, because I'm the one who dragged JJIB up in the first place, and boy, can I kick a hornet's nest. All
No, it's good that it was, yeah. Yeah, that was excellent.
I mean,
right,
it was clearly timely.
Yes,
Right,
very
right.
timely.
quite,
And just change barring to bearing.
yes. Yes, we had that on our list.
Actually, I remember having that conversation.
We actually looked it up.
And made the wrong decision.
And I brought it up last meeting, and I chuckled when I saw it was there.
We're good. All right, I would accept a motion to approve the second reading of policy EHB-R, the data records retention policy.
I'll make that motion this time.
Thank you, Jeff.
We'll just go around the table.
We should, I'll second.
So-
All right, thank you, Gary. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are unanimous. I would accept a motion to approve the Newmarket School District Safety and Health Manual. And thank you, Gary, for all the work on that committee.
That was one of the best hours I've spent on a committee. It was very quick.
High praise, because this man has spent a lot of time on
Yeah,
committees.
it was a very quick meeting, a very quick committee time. Happy to do it.
I'll move so that your great time can be
Thank you, Kathy.
approved.
Second.
Thank you, Lonnie. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are unanimous. I would accept a motion to approve the Newmarket Employee Handbook for fiscal year 2026.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Jeff.
Second.
Thank you, Gary. We're really in a rhythm now. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are unanimous. So let me get my actual notes here. I would accept a motion to approve increasing the retained fund balance for the end of this fiscal year to 3.75%.
I'll so move.
Thank you, Kathy.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're unanimous, 5-0. I would accept a motion to encumber the amount. Todd, please tell me if I'm saying this right.
Yeah, basically, the only significant change now is the paying the 16,500.
250.
All right, so I would accept a motion.
16,250,
Oh, okay,
according to the documents.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
I would accept a motion to encumber $16,250 from 2024,
I'm gonna check
2025.
I thought it was
I had
250.
16.5.
Because 89,250 was the windows, but we don't have to do anything with that because you've already paid it. So the only change is going to be 16.5, which is severance.
I think it is 16.5.
You good? Okay.
All right,
I trust you more than I trust me. So.
so we're good at 16.5? All right.
Now
I'd
I
accept-
want to know.
All right, options for encumbrance. I'm gonna look at the documentation.
My apologies to everyone watching at home, it's late.
It is 16.5.
It is 16.5.
Okay. I would accept a motion to encumber $16,500 to cover severance expenses out of fiscal year 2024, 2025 funds.
So
Thank you, Gary.
Second.
Thank you,
as a
Jeff.
discussion, I apologize for wasting 10 seconds of my
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are unanimous, 5-0. Coaching nominations. We have a genuine new item here.
Well, basically, what we're trying to do is to get all of the coaches that we are able to nominate far enough in advance so that we can approve them, because most of the fall coaches, they are doing summer coaching work and so forth. So it's important to have them under contract so that they're not coaching without actually officially being under contract. So all of the fall coaches that we have in place are in front of you for approval. All of them are current employees, with the only change being that Nicole Sanborn, thank you, moved from being middle school girls coach to JV coach. But everything else is,
All right, before we vote, I just want, for the public or anyone watching, we do have openings to coach JV boys soccer, middle school boys soccer, middle school girls soccer, and middle school cross country. And we would love to have anyone who's interested in coaching those teams. Please reach out to Mr. Hayes.
absolutely.
And
His
The middle school cross-country assistant.
assistant, I'm sorry. Thank you for the clarification. The assistant coach for middle school cross country. But anyone who's interested in coaching any of that, please reach out to Mr. Hayes. His contact info is on the website. With that, I'd accept a motion to approve the nominations of Ken Najim as varsity boys soccer coach, Andrew Dawson as varsity girls soccer coach, Nicole Sanborn as JV girls soccer coach, Blake Neary as varsity cross country coach, and Jen Doloff as middle school cross country coach.
So moved.
Thank you, Lonnie.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much to all of our coaches, particularly community volunteers. It's greatly appreciated, and we're unanimous. Last item, I unfortunately see have a resignation that we need to approve.
Yes. Kat Wells, been a great employee of ours for 3 years. However, she does live in Kennebunk, and she has decided with a young family that she wants to live closer to where she works. So that's basically it. She's has very positive feelings. It's just we aren't in Kennebunk. So
All right, our appreciation to Ms. Wells for her time serving the district. I'd accept a motion to approve that resignation.
So move.
Thank you, Kathy. Second?
Second.
And we
Thank
wish her
you.
luck.
Yep, and we
Jinx.
wish her luck. Thank you, Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
I move we go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A32C, discuss the personnel matter.
I had C, do we also need, I had written one other one down that I thought might be relevant, but now I can't find it. So I'll go with the motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A:3, 2, subpart C, which Gary made the motion, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Second from Lonnie. By roll call vote, Lonnie Stebbins,
Aye.
Dan Smith, aye. Kathy Miles-Benden.
Aye.
Gary Swanson.
Aye.
Jeff Boyd.
Aye.
We are unanimous, and we are going into non-public. Channel 8, we will not be coming back live after this.